Hey everyone, and welcome. If you live in your life here in Australia but always dreaming about having your parents join you for good, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to break down one of the most direct ways to make that dream a reality, the contributory parent visa, also known as Subclass 143.
You know, it's a feeling so many of us can relate to. You've set up your life, you've got your job, your friends, but a huge piece of your heart is thousands of miles away. And sure, visitor visas are nice, but they're just a temporary fix. So what's the real, long-term, permanent answer to bringing your family back together? Let's get into it.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll cover the absolute basics, what this visa is all about, and what rights it actually gives your parents. Then we're going to hit the three biggest topics every family has to think about: the pretty staggering cost, the nitty-gritty of the application journey, and of course, that famously long wait. And to finish up, we'll look at what life could actually look like for your family in Australia once the visa is finally in hand.
Okay, so first things first. What exactly are we talking about here? Let's be clear, this isn't just a long holiday visa. This is the official, government-approved pathway to bringing your parents to Australia for good.
So the Subclass 143 is a permanent visa. And that word, permanent, is absolutely the key here. It's designed specifically for parents whose kids are already settled in Australia, whether they're citizens, permanent residents, or certain New Zealand citizens. We're not talking about a visit, we're talking about a one-way ticket to a new life in Australia.
So when we say permanent residency, what does that actually get you? What does it mean in the real world? Well, it's so much more than just a label on a piece of paper. It comes with a whole package of rights that let your parents truly, properly build a life here.
And look at what's included here. It's pretty huge. Your parents can stay here forever, indefinitely. They can get a job, they can go back to school, and this is a big one, they can enroll in Medicare, Australia's public healthcare system. Further down the road, they might even be able to apply for Australian citizenship. It's really about full participation in Australian society.
All right, now for the part of the chat that, well, it requires a deep breath. You see that word contributory in the visa's name? It's there for a very, very specific reason. It means there's a major financial contribution involved.
And this really leads to the million-dollar question, or, well, the tens of thousands of dollars question that every single family has to ask. What is the actual price tag for this kind of permanent future for your parents?
And there it is. For just one parent, the cost starts at over 48,000 Australian dollars. And yeah, you heard that right. It's a massive amount of money. The government calls it a contribution because, in their view, it's helping to cover your parents' future healthcare and social support costs.
Now, there is a silver lining here. You don't have to come up with all of that cash on day one. It's split into two payments. You pay a smaller amount when you first submit the application, then the second and much bigger installment is only due when the government asks for it, which is usually right before they're about to make a decision, and that can be years down the line. And just a quick heads up, that big number isn't the total final figure. You've also got to factor in other costs, like the required medical exams, getting police clearance certificates from every country your parents have lived in, that sort of thing. It all adds up. Okay, so we've covered the what's and the how much. Now let's get into the how. What does this application journey actually look like from the very beginning to the very end?
Now, this is a super important point you absolutely have to get right. Where your parents are when they lodge the application is critical. If they apply from overseas, they have to be overseas when they hit submit. If they're already in Australia on, say, a visitor visa, they have to be physically in the country when they apply. It's a black and white rule, so you really need to plan around.
So we've talked about the financial cost. Now we need to talk about the other big cost: time. Because the processing time for this visa isn't in months. We're talking years. Many, many years. And there's a very specific reason for that.
And it all comes down to these two little words right from the Department of Home Affairs: capping and queuing. Basically, it means the government puts a hard limit, a cap, on how many parent visas they're going to grant in any given year.
I know, it sounds like government jargon, right? But it has a massive real-world impact on your family. So what does it actually mean in plain English?
Think of it like this. When you apply, they first check to make sure you've filled everything out correctly. If you have, you're given a queue date and you get in line. And it's a very, very long line. Your application just sits there waiting until one of those limited spots for the year becomes available. Only then, years later, does someone actually pick it up to make a final decision. So you're not waiting for them to process it, you're waiting for a spot to open up.
Okay, let's fast forward through all those years of waiting. Imagine the email finally arrives. The visa has been granted.
What happens next? What does your family's future in Australia really look like from that day forward?
The day the visa is granted is day 1 of permanent residency. For the first 5 years, their visa has a travel facility, which means they can leave and re-enter Australia as much as they need to. But after those 5 years, if they want to travel overseas and come back as a permanent resident, they'll need to apply for something called a resident return visa. And then, of course, the ultimate goal for many is to eventually apply for Australian citizenship.
And it's so important to remember that with all of these amazing rights come some very real responsibilities. This quote from the government says it all. Your parents have to follow all Australian laws and stick to any specific conditions on their visa. It's a serious commitment.
Now, it's worth knowing that the 14.3 isn't the only option out there. There's another one, the Subclass 173, which is kind of like a two-step process. It lets you spread that huge cost over a couple of years. And then there's the Subclass 870. But you have to be really clear on this one. It is just a long-term visitor visa. It is not a path to permanent residency.
So, to boil it all down, what are the 3 things you absolutely have to remember? Number 1, this visa is permanent. It's the ultimate solution. Number 2, it is incredibly expensive, a huge financial decision. And number 3, it is a very, very long wait, all because of that government cap and queue.
And that really leaves us with the final and most important question of all. Knowing what you know now about the high cost, the long waits, and the amazing benefits at the end, you have to ask yourself, is this truly the right future for your family? And that's a question only you can answer.